At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
The primary purpose of Uniquely Human, the podcast, is to educate and inform. The views expressed during all episodes are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute educational or medical advice. Listeners should consult with professionals familiar with each individual or family for specific guidance.
Uniquely Human, the podcast, is produced by Elevated Studio. Music is graciously provided by Matt Savage of Savage Records.
Hi, I'm Dr. Barry Prezant, clinical scholar, researcher, and consultant on autism and neurodiversity, and a Brooklyn boy raised in the big city.
And I'm Dave. I'm none of those things, and I grew up on a farm in Illinois. But being on the spectrum myself, I have plenty of personal insight to lend.
And this is Uniquely Human, the podcast, a show that illuminates and celebrates autism and neurodiversity. Today we have a very special guest, and Dave and I are excited because we already have had some wonderful conversations with Matt Ross. So Matt, welcome to Uniquely Human, the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. And we're going to really do a deep dive into many reasons that we wanted Matt to be on our podcast so our listeners could benefit from his experience and his wisdom in a number of areas. So a little bit about Matt. Matt is an entrepreneur, an author, and media executive with nearly 30 years of experience building businesses that inspire passion and creativity, and especially his interest in the arts, which we're going to dig into a little bit. He is also the father of an adult non-speaking autistic son. Since 2012, Matt has been the founder and CEO of One River School, a company whose mission is to transform art education today. One River operates 15 schools in 6 states. In 2005, Matt became the CEO of School of Rock, and under his leadership, the company grew from 5 to 55 locations. Matt holds an MBA in finance from the Stern School of Business at NYU and is a cum laude graduate in marketing from SUNY Albany. So we are fellow SUNY alums. He also is a former member of the Board of Trustees for Art 21 and the Bergen Performing Arts Center. His advocacy efforts focus on 2 main areas: supporting organizations that build communities for adults with autism and championing artists and art-based organizations. He's the author of the forthcoming book, Grow or Fold, Transform Yourself in Midlife and Beyond, a story of awakening your enthusiasm for growth. So let's dig in. There's so much we could talk about. Matt, if you would just share some aspects of your journey, of your personal and professional journey, and how that led to your current work, especially in building communities for autistic adults, as well as promoting artists and art-based organizations.
Fair question. So born and bred in New York, in Queens, not the beneficiary of a lot of mentoring. So I've always had this keen sense of how do I work on myself to navigate the streets of New York, build a career that would inspire me. And so my career journey took me into the radio business. I was passionate about music and passionate about advertising and consumer behavior. Just to consolidate that, I spent 20 years in that space. And when I went to the School of Rock, it was just the most wonderful pivot to be able to be at an early stage venture to teach kids to play rock and roll, which was at the foundation of what motivated me in life, music and performative aspects. Along my journey, we had a son who was born with severe autism and a lot of other complexities, behavioral, uber challenging. And, he almost died. He had seizure disorder. young baby, little guy, like 1.5, 2. And so the trauma of being a parent, trying to advocate, we'll call it in the late 90s, early 2000s in this space for somebody who had, we'll call it the maximum challenge,
Mm-hmm.
was unbearably stressful. On top of raising a second kid, on top of trying to be a provider for my family, and trying to live out my best self professionally, which I was highly motivated to do. Type
Mm-hmm.
A to perform and grow businesses and get stuff done. And also type A around trying to do everything that I needed to do put a tremendous burden on me emotionally, mentally, physically. And I just kept working on myself until 50 years old when things really got very challenging for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to continue and tell you more of that story, or I could pause there.
Yeah, I think one thing we always try to emphasize here, especially when we talk about autism specifically, is the complexity of the co-occurring conditions and just the layers of extra stress, both for the autistic person as well as for families, because it just raises so many questions that in some cases never remain answered. So,
So let me frame something that will create context relative to that. When our little boy was running in circles, the doctors were saying, "He's just a boy, don't worry about it." When we're saying, "Hey, he's 1.5, he's not speaking at all, don't worry, he's a boy." And then we brought him for some hearing tests, and it came back this, you know, ABR, it's a brain wave, and came back like he could hear dust falling off the wall, like how his hearing was flawless. But we
hmm
talk to him, and he would ignore you. So we're like, hmm. We brought him to the Marcus Center in Atlanta, and this is 1999, 1998, and we look on the wall. There's a pamphlet that says, if your child has more than 5 of these 12 symptoms, they might be on the autism spectrum. Or they might have autism, actually. There was no discussion of spectrum. He had
hmm
all 12. I looked at me, I looked at her, and we went, oh my God. So the journey began, and what we were told to do back then was we could cure him. Actually, we could save him. And I'm in
Yes.
quotation marks. We could save him if we threw 40 hours a week of behavioral therapy, ABA, in our house. We built in our basement around the clock education funded from our pocket. So we were racing against time. And you know
hmm
what happens when you have that burden on you? Every day you see or don't see progress. In this particular case, didn't see much progress. We would get more anxious and more worried and more challenged and, and look for answers. And so there was very little talking 25 years ago. He's 30 today.
hmm
Oh, and he's doing nicely, and we'll talk about that.
Right.
But but the stress, the burden, and it's still that way for people who have severely complex, but not just that. People on the spectrum at all levels. It creates different levels of challenges. And so my wife, who is going to be on the Mount Rushmore of moms one day, literally, um, we had to sort of play man-to-man defense. We had a second kid. She would care for Alex during the day. I'd go out and try and make money, and because she couldn't work. And our second boy, we would just try and do the best we could caring for Jason without giving 1,000% to Alex. We'd had to give him a little bit, but inevitably, it is a very lonely place, and one
hmm
that just creates tremendous stress and uncertainty. Maximum stress, maximum uncertainty leads to maximum, so we'll call it psychological challenges. And I had them, and my wife had them, and
hmm
we had to fight and fight and fight to stay on the right page.
Right. And that's, we talk about intersectionality with the individual who's on the spectrum, never mind the quote unquote intersectionality of being a parent, being a professional,
Yes.
putting 1,000% into your work, putting 1,000% into your family. What's left for you? You're operating at a deficit for just what you need 24 hours a day. And that's, you can't sustain that without serious health problems.
Yeah, for sure. I had the advocacy mindset, so I moved back to New York in 1999 from Atlanta, Georgia, where I was running radio stations, and we were down. So we were in the South, and the services were very, very bleak for us there.
Hmm.
When we moved back, I got this role to be the vice president, general manager of Q1043, the classic rock station. It was my dream job, and we moved to northern New Jersey, Bergen County, where the services were seemingly available in the public school environment. And we went to work and we found people at Columbia who created this program called the Pediatric Neurology Center there. And I formed a nonprofit at Q104 and we raised millions of dollars to help organizations with early intervention services. They needed, you know, $10,000 for some tools and I just felt like I had this blessing of having this pulpit of this great radio station to go out and do some good on behalf of this community that nobody was advocating for at all. You didn't
Hmm.
hear about it at all in 2000. And fast forward, you know, it gave me perspective because I saw how many people, I felt less lonely. I saw how many people
Hmm.
were in the same struggle.
Hmm.
And I felt in some weird way, even though we had someone who will call it all the way at the far end of complexity, I felt that I was doing good for others, and it started to calm my brain a little bit. I was
Hmm.
aboard trying to provide resources and support for others. And for you, then it's not all just about you and your woe is me. It's about what are we all going to do together to sort of raise awareness and help.
You know, you allude to the importance of community and not feeling isolated and not feeling alone. You may not be aware that we've been doing a parent retreat weekend for this in May. It'll be our 27th year.
Amazing.
And the magic that happens when parents connect with other parents to realize other people are on the same journey and the same challenges, but also kind of the same strategies or the way to deal with what they hear from professionals in many cases. Because one thing you said, we could, but we're not going to go down this rabbit hole of parents who were promised so much about recovery, who were promised so much about if you do this intensive, incredibly expensive intervention, trust us, you know, you will overcome autism. And not only the challenges of having your family member in the home with his or her own challenges, but then the challenge of saying, can I trust these people? They're saying this, but I'm not seeing this.
Yeah, so our journey was it's funny. We had a great school district in Cresco, New Jersey, in Bergen County. They do a nice job. And we recognized immediately that wherever Alex was, he was the person who needed one-to-one or two-to-one support. The question was, is how do we enhance his capacity to manage himself, to understand his role in the world, and
Mm-hmm.
people to understand who he was and how he behaved to maximize their relationship with him when he couldn't advocate for himself. Some folks who are nonverbal can use the augmentative device or a
Mm-hmm.
PAC system or other things. Alex was low functioning intellect. He was high functioning in gross motor skills. This kid could shoot a basketball with perfect form, guys. Literally, I'd bring him to the schoolyard and he would, as they say in Queens, pound the rock, dribble the ball, dribble, 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 look around, look up. He's looking around. You could throw a ball to him. He could catch a ball in his left hand while dribbling with his right hand. And I was thinking, isn't that fascinating how the human brain works?
Mm-hmm.
Here's a boy who literally can't follow a two-step direction auditorially. You know, he might, if we say, Alice, come, we're going in the car, he might hear go car. I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking. And what I learned a lot is I believe he really had the auditory processing piece is probably how he hears like he's underwater. I read things early on. There's probably some challenge that prevents him from hearing language, so therefore he can't probably speak or process like that's an idea that I have, but it's not validated. But nevertheless, so we're sort of on this journey with him, and I'm a strange human being, guys. I'm going to tell you right off the top. I have this weird interest in humans. My my professional trajectory and my life trajectory has prepared me to be a good coach of others. I've
Mhm.
studied human behavior, I've studied consumer behavior, I've studied leadership. I've probably read the Guinness Book of World Record number of self-help books in my lifetime. And I probably had to do so and wanted to do so. Wanted to do so because I've always been deeply motivated to learn and deeply inquisitive and curious, but also didn't have the mentoring and blessed, how do I say, um, infrastructure to maximize my pure potential on my own, from parenting. And so I invested in myself. And what happened was it made me really intrigued about my son. And
Mhm.
if we took him here and he behaved this way, why was he behaving this way that day when he was good the other day? What was going on in his brain? How did, he's human. We sometimes forget that he's just like everyone else.
Mhm.
Oh, many ways
Mhm.
his needs, his wants, his desires, his affect. Even to this day, he's 30. And my wife was just saying, we walk around the city. He's always amazing. We go in, we get food, we do this and that. But all of a sudden now, when I bring him into a store, he just doesn't want to sit there. He gets a little bit frustrated. And I go, he's a 30-year-old guy. Like,
Yeah.
do you think I would want to just sit there for 40 minutes watching you try on shoes?
Right.
I don't want to do that either.
No, there's a reason why you always see the husband in the food court
Right.
moping while while the rest of the family is out shopping.
So she
But
laughs and she says, yeah,
yeah,
but he's always so compliant. I said, well, maybe he was just really trying to really be nice to mom so many times. And now he's finally hit the wall and said, I can't do it anymore, mom.
Right.
Let me just keep moving because this place where you're trying on perfumes is annoying me right now. I gotta keep going. Right.
Oh, especially that smell. Yeah.
So this uniquely human piece, I love that component to how you sort of describe this, because I sort of live in the world of be feeling we all are uniquely human, each one of us.
Hmm.
Got a How I describe it is a blend of ingredients in a big broth, and some of the ingredients that make the broth perfect might be missing in my son, but he's got a lot of the other ingredients that are beautiful and great. Like
There you go.
we take him everywhere. He is meaning all around New York. He's looks typical. And we also know when we see some early warning signs, we kind of know what it means.
Yes.
We got to pay the tab and get going right now.
right.
We're not going down that slippery slope.
Mount Vesuvius is warming up, and we want
Well,
to.
and the reason why is because your parenting approach is essentially the underlying thesis of Barry's work, which is you're asking the deep why. Why in this setting was he far more comfortable when it appeared to be the exact same setting last week? What were the factors?
Hmm.
Right. We also have, and then there's the reverse engineering where he used to love to swim. And this, I was telling you about his gross motor skills. And I mean it. You could throw a ball, he'd have a ball in his right hand, you throw a ball, he'd catch it in the left hand. He's ambidextrous, he would throw either ball. It was fascinating. I grew up as being a weird left brain, right brain guy. I could play sports, but also very creative. And, and I'm like, gosh, this kid would have been my stud athlete son. He was just wired to be that guy. So, but as time has gone on, I've go, wow, the boy doesn't want to go swimming anymore. The guy who would go in the pool for 5 hours. It was such a blessing for us. When we moved back to New York, we got this home in the woods. It was self-contained, it was safe, and we had a pool, and he would just swim for hours. Like,
Hmm.
but he wouldn't be able to follow your directions. He would just have his own little crawl, side stroke, backstroke. And nowadays, if you ask him to go in the pool, it's no, 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 no. Like, don't even bother me with that, Dad. I'm done. I don't swim anymore. And for a while, I was so frustrated because it was something we did together,
Hmm.
something that, and I'm going to say this respectfully, it made me feel good because
Sure.
he was doing something typical. And I was like, that's so cool. I could share this with my son. And then I realized, no, it's not about me. He's got his own unique differences or loves or joy, or I don't want to do it anymore. And
Yeah.
he has that right. So I had to sort of, as time went on, I also had to realize that there were things he used to love that we used to do that we can't do anymore. And that
Hmm.
isn't that part of being human too?
Like exactly, like so many of us, and I think also, just the fact that it made you feel good, it probably was about the connection piece as well.
A thousand
So
percent,
yeah.
right. And one thing I would say, and if I keep talking about Alex, one of the blessings that we were given with this young man was he, unlike his challenges to communicate in a typical way, he has such high affect. His eye contact is extraordinary for
Hmm.
a young man who really can't speak at all and has a problem processing information. He builds rapport with people. He's very loving and engaging.
Mm.
So I feel so weirdly blessed at times because when he looks at me, it's just like, oh my God, he's looking through me with love.
Hmm.
And I'm like, who gets that from their 30-year-old son?
Exactly.
My other boy,
Exactly.
who's 27, musician, living in Greenpoint, he's going, he's coming. I'm like, when's he gonna call me next? He's got no time for me.
Yes.
A dad once said to me, when I look into my son's eyes, this was a youngster in the morning. This dad said, it's like he's looking into my soul. Uh,
1,000%
yeah.
doubt. And when he looks at my wife, so here's a funny story. When we were trying to get him to use the augmentative device, it was a struggle. It was a struggle. And then it would be, I want something was what how they were programming this device. I'm sure you've been around this, I've seen it.
Hmm.
And he would tell us, he would go, I drink mommy. He would hit three separate buttons. I drink mommy. And if you saw the love he has for his mother, I mean, probably so many parents feel this way that they could make a documentary about that love that
Hmm.
a child has for their mother. I am very clear that I'm run way behind in that race.
Uh,
She's going to finish way out in front. I'm miles behind, and it's okay.
yeah.
Brings me joy. She loves it. And this boy could drink mommy. He loved her, metaphorically speaking. And it brings so much joy to me and the people around her and him who see them walking through the meatpacking district of New York. And they
Mm.
have this recurring loop that they do on Sundays. And I go frequently. And the shopkeepers and people, they go, hey, how are you guys doing? They just know she's there with her man-child
Yeah.
and cruising through New York, and it's a blessing. And they're getting a cappuccino and a croissant and eating lunch, and it brings her so much joy.
I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
So I know we've learned a lot already about how much you've learned in your journey with your son and with your family. Uh, I don't know if you want to continue along those lines and talk even more specifically, and especially how it relates to the book
Yeah,
that you have forthcoming and what
I
other parents can take away from what you're
I'm
saying.
happy to jump in and talk about that because now that I've set the table for how we got to a great place
Hmm.
and some of the components, my book, Grow or Fold, Transform Yourself in Midlife, started to write it in 2018, and I never thought I was just going to write a book. It wasn't a thing. But I was sitting having coffee one day and I said to myself, God, things are really great. Why? that's a weird thing for me to say. I've been grinding so hard my whole life, my adult life. What occurred? And I started to reflect on what occurred from 2010 to 2018, the work I did on myself and having gotten Alex to a different place. So let me take you back to 2010. When I was at 50, the big 50H, the world was off the rails for me. And I'm going to encapsulate it this way: health issues, all four of our parents dying or declining,
Hmm.
two brothers lost to addiction. One had suicidal ideation, and the other one was virtually homeless in and out of public assistance. And I'm the youngest of three.
Hmm.
On top of that, I'm out of a job. So during the recession in '09, I found a private equity firm to invest in School of Rock. And a year later, we parted ways. They wanted to bring in one of their partners who was a former McDonald's guy. He was well known to them. And this is what happened.
Hmm.
And I didn't control the business, notwithstanding I was an investor. You know, so now I'm out of a job. All of that is in my 50th year. And then Alex, at 16 years old, has a complete psychiatric breakdown and decline. The school that he was in by that time was cared for the most complex kids with autism, called the Phoenix Center in Nutley, New Jersey. They called us and said, we can't do it. So,
Hmm.
when you get that call from them, they said, we're really worried and we can't care for him anymore. We can't teach him. And we saw decline happening over a month or two. We brought Alex home, and over the next week or so, we didn't know what to do. He pulled the hair out of his head, guys.
Hmm.
He had a complete manic breakdown in the city outside of a doctor's office. We had to get him to an emergency room, and he had a full psychiatric breakdown. And we had to leave him in a psychiatric ward, shackled down with suicidal teens, drug abused teens.
Hmm.
That night, I remember like yesterday, I came back to my house. My wife and I couldn't speak. Not that we were fighting, we just had no energy. I
Hmm.
went to my basement and somehow sat there by myself. And this thought came to my head was, are you going to fold? And it was such a weird thought. Like, why am I beating myself up? I'm so down.
Hmm.
And I guess that's what we do from Queens, New York. We just keep pounding on ourselves.
Hmm.
And then I just kept thinking, gosh, what am I going to do? And then I had this thought, are you going to grow? And I honestly, I remembered leaning forward in my chair and going, tomorrow I begin anew. I didn't tell anybody about that. Grow or fold became a mantra for me quietly. And I started to think about a concept which was novel. And why didn't I treat myself like a business? Which meant, how do I step away from the anxiety and all the emotional challenges and everything being so overwhelming to work on myself?
Hmm.
So a therapist once said to me that, you know, think about this, Matt, one day when you're really struggling. Why don't you think of yourself as somebody you're sitting across the room, up high, one story above, watching yourself, and you're listening to the conversation that you're having with yourself? What would you tell that person? So the key was, how do I get unemotional? In
Hmm.
business, I was taught to build businesses based upon doing an inventory. Where are we? What's working? What's not working? What's the gap between where we are and where we need to get to? Vision, strategy, plan, execute. But I wasn't doing it for myself. I was just driving a car really fast. That was my personal life, my professional life. I had no sense of purpose. I was just in motion. And
Hmm.
all of the anxiety and all the stress and trauma that we were dealing with, I kind of was like one of those people. I stayed in motion. I was okay. When I sat quietly, I would ruminate on all the problems. I'm sure you've seen this or heard this.
Hmm.
And it began to free me up to crystallize where I wanted to get to very thoughtfully,
Hmm.
write it out. What was the work I needed to do on myself to get smarter and get healthier? What did I want to do professionally? How would I take this 25-year career that was pretty successful, but now I'm 50? What am I going to do?
Hmm.
led to me launching One River School, this art school, which
Hmm.
was a profound thing because I hadn't taken an art class since I was 14.
Huh.
Simply asked a question, how come there were no cool art schools in my neighborhood? Every time I opened a School of Rock location anywhere across the US, people would say, you saved my kid's life. I go, wait a minute, we just taught them to play the Rolling Stones. What are you talking about? And then I realized we had that profound effect on their self-esteem and their wellness, and we gave them
Hmm.
something. And I thought maybe we could do this in the visual arts space. So I raised some capital and launched a school, and
Hmm.
I would open more if we could figure it out. So my journey in 2018 was a reflective one, actually,
Hmm.
2000, where I conquered so many tasks and challenges. We got my son out of psychiatric center and got him into a residential school in Maryland, where he spent 5 years, gang, on his own, building independence. Even though they cared for him, he had to, as they say, man up and step up and advocate for himself and be the best he could be. We weren't in the room. We take him home once a month. And
Sounds
we,
like building self-determination.
right, and we lose sight of that, right? We always look at what they can't do.
Hmm.
So now, I mean, I could cry because we would drop him off and I would leave him there and I'd go, oh, is someone going to abuse him? And, all these fears that you have as a parent. But I'm like, you know what? Wait a minute. He's a 17-year-old guy and he doesn't let me kind of do things. I don't mean physically, but like if I'm like, take his pretzels away, he's pissed. And I don't think people are going to abuse this guy because I think he's going to handle himself in the dorm, if you will. I saw him like he would have his little chair in the corner and he would very intuitive. He would have his eyes on people and I felt like, wow, he is advocating for himself in his own way and growing.
Hmm. If I
And
might interject,
yeah,
such a parallel that I'm seeing here, that you, in a sense, kind of with the art school,
yep,
gave yourself purpose, but
yes.
you're also seeing your son being more purposeful and being supported and being more purposeful in his own life.
Barry, you hit on it's so, I mean, you're very intuitive. I have to give you credit because I wrote this concept in the book called The Three-Legged Stool that I was sitting on was broken. Personally, I was broken at 50. Professionally, I was out of a job and I had no sense of purpose. Anybody who mentioned the word purpose, I would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just working hard and trying to stay in front of all the challenges of life. But as I started to work on myself and I started to think about where I wanted to get to personally and professionally, I started to realize what School of Rock did for people and could
Exactly.
find meaning through this art school. And I literally, that last leg of the stool, the purpose piece. So in my book, um, I think it's chapter 9 or so, finding your purpose. And I started off by saying, "Oh, I know you. If you're about to read this, you're gonna go, oh, another guy talking about purpose." And I'm gonna say, "Stop. That's how I felt. Follow along." And I have a wordsmithing exercise that I give readers because I started to investigate. I would ask people, "Can you tell me what your purpose is in one sentence?" And virtually 100% of humans could not. And then I would say, well, but do you know it's true that they say for those who could frame their purpose and live through their purpose, they have a massive advantage in longevity, health, wellness, happiness, etc. Why is it that if we know that to be true, almost none of us can share what our purpose is? So I go through this chapter just to get the wheels turning. And in doing so, I have a clearly defined sentence that defines my purpose. And it is the following: to be positive, because I am that guy. I'm a positive, optimistic guy, and to help people find their magic and their creative inspiration.
Mm.
And finding the magic is what I do for professionals in coaching and guiding people to be the best they can be in the professional sense. And then the creative inspiration is helping people find whatever it is that inspires them to do something creatively. Because I
Hmm.
do believe that creative growth is the X factor in life. And it's so intuitive that you hit on that because I really, really felt like my three-legged stool was built now in steel once I got one school going and I saw what we were doing for others. And that's what life is about. What you guys do for others by the podcast, you have fun doing it, but it's really for others to help them. And that's what life is about. How are we of service to others? And I feel way less selfish and way less in my own head these days because I have this new sensibility through the book that I wrote, through the talks that I'm doing. And this is just the beginning for me to this new chapter of my life.
Well, the parallels to business, if you can't state as an organization what your vision, mission, strategy are, and everybody's not aligned and working towards that together. When I led an organization, I made sure that everybody had all three of those. Yep. And if they needed to, I said, print this and hang it, because one day you're going to have a very stressful day and all of this goes out the window and you're going to go back to just instinct and emotion. But we keep it on the rails. Same thing, just like you said, with human beings. If you can't say, like, what is it that I'm here for? Then you're always just kind of flailing in the current and the river's pushing you. But if you say, nope, this is the role that I play, this is what I do all of this for, it doesn't have to be some profound thing like my purpose is to, build 30 high rises, this and that. Like you said, I want to help people improve where they are in life and bring optimism to that. That's simple. And you can apply that to work, to school, church, anything that you're involved in. But the other thing that I'm noticing is whether it's School of Rock or the school that you created, it seems like there's always much more fulfillment when you are not just consuming, but you're creating and consuming. So you're feeding the what you're consuming. Like, to say that you're just creating in a band is not really true, because you're listening to it and you're consuming what's happening as a band as you're making music, but you're also creating and contributing. And I think that's the key.
Without a doubt. By the way, if you read the Oxford Dictionary definition for purpose, it is in effect your reason for living. That's literally what it is. And isn't it funky that most people can't frame that in a sentence?
Right. Right.
So I'm out there, Dave, talking and building a talk and now building a workshop. And in the workshop, if I said to everybody, what are your goals? They also, people kind of check out, oh God, here we go with goals. And it's the same. Yeah. But so I have this idea that what I'm going to do when I start doing these workshops is, all right, everybody, take out your phone right now. Take out your Google Maps. I want you to open it, right? All right, here's an exercise. It's a warm up. I want you to plug in. You see your current location, where you're going. I want you to plug in, I don't know, and then hit start and see where you go.
I love
that. I don't know is the destination. Okay, forget it. How about I don't want to do this and hit start? Let's just see how AI responds or Google's algorithm.
Yeah. Well, if you type in, I don't want to do this, for most people, it is going to take them right to their office.
That's really funny. But, think about it. So then I would say, okay, let's just say, you plugged in something and it was a discrete location. Well, you know what? There's a route, but then you could also hit a button that goes more routes.
Yeah.
You want to go 14 different ways. That's what's called strategy, right? You can choose to take a different path because you want to stop at Whole Foods first.
Right.
Or you want to come over here, or you want to get to the gym, or you want to go sit at the beach on the interim for lunch and then finally get to where you're going. I'm a big, big, big believer. And I actually been also doing some research about the percentage of humans who actually set goals and how likely people are to have greater success when they do set goals. So this goes back to the theme that I was been talking about before with purpose. if we know these things are really good for us, so we're not talking right now about folks on the spectrum, we're talking about everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You know something is really good for you. What gets in the way of you actually doing what's good for you? Quite often, it's a discrete choice to not do what's good for you. Because it's a choice we make to get up every day and maybe just scroll on TikTok for 2 hours as opposed to, what do I really need to do so I'm happier in 3 months or 6 months or
Mm-hmm. And
and
that,
go ahead.
yeah, and that demands so much self-reflection to be able to say in my gut what feels good, what feels right, and let's push away all those external messages that are saying, no, you shouldn't be doing that, or we don't like what you're doing and we pay you, or whatever it is. But it's also about seeing and honoring when you see a light, through the proverbial door and stepping through. Regardless of what people say, you don't want to go through that door.
So Barry, you're 1,000% right. Not only does it have the piece where it's about reflection, this notion of vulnerability and self-awareness also. Am I looking at myself accurately?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm really good at X based on what evidence? It's
Mm-hmm.
very hard to create strategy if you don't have an accurate sort of portrayal of where you are, your inventory, who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you love to do, what you don't love to do. How have you been performing against key, performance indicators, right? And we don't do this. So when I learned that I needed, because I told you how the crisis I was in.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a financial crisis. I had okay money. I had some money saved. So fortunately, I didn't have that. But I had virtually every other item that could cause maximum amount of stress, from death to disease to out of a job to mental health, physical health issues. Just had to get unemotional about how I was going to work on myself and build plans and then create accountability for myself. So I applied this CEO toolkit that I have and skill set to work on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the book really does. So the book is one part, we'll call it memoir, but not a deeply woven memoir where everyone learns every item about me, just my journey to midlife. What did I go through? Where did I come from? Who
Mm-hmm.
drove me, et cetera, et cetera. Then clearly the struggle in the middle age where at 50, my son's off the rails and everything else is. And how was I going to respond? And started with treating myself like a business. So part two is about the work I had to do on myself and to create a plan and manage that plan. Part three in the book is about growth. I came up with this concept called pure growth. Pure growth is a function of three aspects: functional, emotional, and creative growth. Functional growth is all of the tools to improve your capacity to perform in certain areas, live healthy, sleep better, manage your finances, whatever those things are. There's functional skills we all have. Emotional skills, quite obvious. In my case, I was a powder keg. I was too impulsive. I was definitely having anger issues, which most everyone would, given what I was dealing with. And my patience level was terrible. And ruminating, I just couldn't stop the worry and the fear. And no one really knew how bad it was because you see the smile on my face, right? I told you my mission, my purpose is to be positive. I would be all in on being positive still for everyone else. And I go home at night and stare at the ceiling.
Of course.
So I have a question. Is it that your strategy was to become unemotional, or was the strategy, in addition to using kind of your business mindset skills, is the strategy to look at yourself with more compassion?
I think the compassion piece was the byproduct of the work that I did over time. So investing in my emotional growth allowed me to develop some clear acceptance of where I was.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't change or control everything.
If I could make a little bit of a left turn here, because I hear you saying about how this has worked for you, but you also talk about the importance of parents thinking about the future of their loved one, and making sure that plans are in place and you're very intentional about doing that. Why don't you talk about that a little bit? Because obviously you've given deep thought to that about your son.
Well, I will tell you once again, your interviewing skills and broadcasting skills are kicking in because you're playing right from where we were, which was this notion of this MVP 10 goals for 10 years. Well, immediately I had to get Alex into a residential school because he couldn't come home. He had a psychiatric breakdown, and he was, at that moment in time, behavioral and dangerous, maybe. When he calmed down we gave him, some new medicine at work and calmed down. So the 1 year plan was to get him somewhere where he could start to grow up and advocate for himself, and we could hopefully get him through his 21st, actually through his 22nd birthday. But the interim plan then said, I could not be successful in life if when Alex leaves that program at 22, if he's not in a place where people care for him and care about him, in case Susan and I are not here or something happened to us, what would be the most catastrophic thing of all if something happened to us and we hadn't built the plan for him? So I put the strategy goals in place. I now had, from that moment where he was 16 approaching 17, I had a solid 5 year window. And in business, you do 5 year plans. You do 5 year pro formas and strategy, etc. So for me, this is right in my wheelhouse. We went to work with a tremendous commitment, and my wife was amazing assisting in this, to identify every tool and resource available to us through public assistance that we could allocate or actually tap into to help us provide and create a long-term care program for Alex. So to answer your question here, if parents have a child who right now is 5, thinking about where they're going to be at 22 is beyond this 10-year plan. But I do think you need to be thinking about near-term, mid-term, and long-term challenges. So if at the best of your ability, what does the potential look like for the best outcome for your 15-year-old child if your child's 5 today? Are those potential options, even if you're not ready to start to put that plan in place, the sooner you start to learn what's available to you, depending upon the complexity of your child at that moment. So everyone listening to this has to be thinking about what is going to be the relative needs of my child at that point in time. You got to start asking questions. That's the way you build strategy. You ask questions first, and then, so what are the relative needs? What do I think the options might be for housing and support tied to what those specific needs might look like? What are the funding resources available to me? And if I don't have any answers, I better get a consultant. I better start to get smart, who can provide all the expertise to make it really easy for me to learn how not to make a massive mistake. Because the funding component and those decisions, if you make mistakes on the paperwork, on the advocacy side, sometimes they're hard to undo. You have to kind of get it right. So getting experts, getting access to resources. I think, Barry, this is one of the most important aspects of what I hope to do on the advocacy side. Because as a business guy who's advocated well for myself, my family, and obviously in the businesses I built, there just seems to be a linear pathway to doing advocacy right or not. It doesn't mean that I'm going to tell people that their son or daughter should be in that program or that program.
Right.
But how do you maximize the resources available to them, given their relative needs? Then you can make the proper decision based upon the landscape available to you.
And I would add to that, in many cases, don't think you have to reinvent the wheel. Other people have been on a similar journey.
Correct. We have to continue to advocate for Alex every day. He's 25 minutes from our house now in Bergen County. We feel blessed, but we also sleep at night.
Yes.
And we sleep at night because We did all the advocacy work starting 10 years prior.
The families that I know that have kind of navigated through that transition most successfully are the ones who look very honestly at answering the question, what is best for my son or daughter, and what is best for us as a family.
Yeah.
And I know parents who've said, he or she is happier in that setting because there are more supports in place than we can provide here in the home. And as you said, you could sleep at night now because there's not that, guilty burden of, are we doing enough? Are we doing enough? Because you are choosing a place that you're comfortable with. So,
if we went back to this book, probably the most cathartic experience I've ever had in my life, because as I now reflect on this book, every time I tell the story, I feel better, happier, stronger, because I'm thinking about what we did and what we overcame.
mm-hmm.
You asked me 20 years ago when my kid was 10, running in circles and, really unbearably challenged, how would you feel if you got to this place? I would have said, I'm never going to get to that place at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
It was not tangible for me.
Mm-hmm.
And, but we did the work and we got here. Now I can reflect on it, pretty proud about it.
And not only reflect on it, but share it with other people.
That's the
through
purpose.
Your book and through your speaking as well, which is
And
important.
the idea about being positive is we can all dwell all day long on the sadness, challenges, etc., what we've given up and what we've had to deal with.
Yeah.
But if you think from a positive perspective, what can it be for them? What can it be for you? We get this one life, right? I don't want to sound selfish, but I wanted to, when I got to 60, have the ability to have some financial resources, some, how do I say, some emotional stability, the ability to travel, and not worry every second who's caring for Alex.
Mm-hmm. Matt, I think that's such an important message for our listeners to hear, and you shared so much about your journey and your strategies. So our listeners, I know, are going to take away so much from this, and even more if they look at your book. So
I already pre-ordered the goddamn thing.
Man.
This thing is coming in January, and I'm reading it the day it arrives.
Dave, can I just say something? I understand you're an audio engineer. We didn't even get to geek out on music here at all. So
yeah,
come back for a round 2.
There you go.
Absolutely. Matt, thank you so much. This has been wonderful, and just, boy, I mean, just to hear your personal journey and kind of, maybe it's an overused cliche, but kind of coming out the other side and where you are now, it is just a wonderful, wonderful message.
Thank you for what you're doing, and keep in touch with me. I'd love to continue to know more, get to know you both, and see how I can help broaden your community as well.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Same.
Thank you.
Thanks.